We are now a full week into camp, and I'm going to give you the vibe I'm getting about this program and what worries I still have and where I think they'll actually be better than we expect on today's Locked On Boston College. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm also the editor and publisher of 247 Sports Eagle Insider. Check out my work there. Now,
you are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
BC has started camp. They've had 6 practices already since last Friday. They get today off, Wednesday off, and Thursday is not open to the media so that the media will be able to go back on Friday. But we've had a chance now to kind of watch and talk to the team, talk to the staff, and get a feel about just where things are at right now. Now, it's early, so things are still kind of evolving. They're still figuring out certain things. Maybe there's, specific game plan pieces that it's going to take a little while for them to get to that point, but they're not there yet because they're not even in pads yet. But what is the vibe I'm getting? What is the vibe that the staff has, that the players have, that maybe gives us some clues on some of the things that are going on behind closed doors? First of all, let's look at Hafley. Hafley, he is the same Jeff Hafley in a sense that you've seen the last 2 years. He's very pleasant. He is forthcoming and talking to you and very non-confrontational, but you can definitely tell there's more of that killer edge to him this year. This edge that maybe it's the feeling of us against the world, which is absolutely a mantra Boston College should adopt because they don't get much respect, and that's absolute truth right there. But maybe it's more just a feeling of being that underdog that will help Hafley and his players kind of find their culture here. Now, that's kind of been his mantra on the recruiting trail. He talks to a lot of kids. Many of them feel like they've been slighted by recruiting sites or the bigger programs that don't see in them what, a guy like Jeff Hafley might see in them. And so this should ring true for this program, but it's that edge you see with Hafley that adds it. And you know what? I think it's also going to ring true when we're looking at, the play on the field. Like, he seems like he's a little bit more assertive out there, a little bit more like he's still that supportive, but he has that edge that he kind of gets on players if they're doing the wrong thing. And that's the way you have to have that. I mean, like, when you watch a Dabo, I always bring up the same coaches, but Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, they all are positive to their players, but they have that edge that they expect the best out of them. And I feel like Hafley's starting to get that. Like, you always want to push them to get better. You always want to push them to improve and clean up things that are part of their games, because it's the only way you're going to get your team to be better. So yeah, you want him to be friendly out there, but you also he needs to have a little bit of the edge of looking at things, finding out what's wrong. And I see that more in him this year. And he's had that in him. He talks about it a lot himself, and and it sounds like something he kind of struggles with. You see Hafley talking about, I need to be better at knowing the offensive game plan more, being more involved in it, which is not to say he doesn't. He's just clarifying that his mind always goes to defense first. But that's something he's working on, and I think he demands that of his players now, and it's more evident than it has been in the past. So it's not to say that it hasn't been there. I see that edge to him. It's going to be interesting to see how that edge presents itself on the field, because we've seen in the years past, he gets in the opposing players' ears. I go back to that game that Hunter Long got hurt against UNC in 2020, and that player, he got hit. I think it was like a low hit, and Hafley flew down the field and got in that player's face. And you see him a little bit with the working the refs, but that's a key there. It's annoying to watch someone like Dabo is a big one. He always does it. But like watching Dabo Swinney work the refs, it's annoying as an opposing fan base to watch him do that. But there's a piece of it that is important to do. So if you're seeing, the refs calling things unequally. You need to call that out and not get yourself 15-yard penalties like Daz used to get done. I mean, he was doing that last year for Colorado State, but doing it in a way that the refs hear you. And I think Hafley, as he continues to grow, is going to get more into that kind of stuff, and that's good. That's the progression as a head coach that you want to see, and I think that piece is very clear in what he's doing. But I go back to the offensive game plan comment with Hafley and that piece of his progression, and I think Mitch said it on our show Monday. Like, yeah, he's going to say that, but each coach, they have their comfort level, and they may say they want to get more involved, and they definitely will get more involved. But at the end of the day, they all of us, we go to what's comfortable for us. So a coach like Dabo, who was a wide receivers coach before, he might gravitate more to the offense when they're talking. That might be why Brent Venables was so valuable to him. Hafley has made it very clear that the offense is more of a challenge. That's why he has Rod Chudzinski with him, who's there. For those who are asking, he's still there. Hafley talked about him earlier last week, that he's still talking to him about offensive game plan type of stuff. But, he may end up going more towards like, hey, okay, this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. Now let me go to the defensive backs. That might just be kind of the natural progression in the way he looks at things. So I think that's going to be a challenge for him. And honestly, I'm not sure it's something that he has to do. Like when you have that mentality, when you come in with a defensive minded mentality, and that's exactly what Jeff Hafley has, you go with hiring the best assistants that you can to execute what you hope to be the best game plan in your mind, and let them kind of do it with interference here and there. But I think that might be reason number one why a lot of these offensive coaches are gone. Like Hafley had certain things that he wanted done, so he did have that mind frame for it, but they just weren't doing it. And he everything is positive right now. He's not going to say anything negative, but I think he's starting to see more of what the offensive game plan is going to start to evolve into. Those changes from McNulty, from Cignetti that we've seen, we haven't seen yet because it took them to the summer camp to basically get those in. And I think we're going to wait and find out, what those are going to look like and how much of an impact he has out there, because he's going to sit in on those meetings, I'm sure, with the certain, squads and talking to Phil Dracovic and all that good stuff. But he's got to have some faith in John McNulty too. And I think that's part of the reason why he brought him in, was a nice veteran head coach, offensive coordinator from a big time program like Notre Dame, who's done that before. And he's surrounded himself with a lot of other positional coaches that have experience. Richie Gunnell was nice, but and this is not to knock him at all, but Darryl Wyatt, their new wide receivers coach, is much more experienced. He has a longer track record than him, and that might be more of the reason why they're doing it. Same thing with Googs. Dave DeGuglielmo, their offensive line coach, he's been coaching more than many of these coaches combined. He's been in NFL, college, you name it, he's done it, and it's a resume that is far exceeds what Matt Applebaum had last year. So you got much more experienced guys out there, and hopefully, as much as he wants to put himself in there, Hafley just relies on the experience and lets the guys, gives them the game plan, the vision of what he wants to do to attack a defense, and goes from there. But that's one of the first takeaways. In a moment, I'm going to give you more in-depth discussion about the offensive line. I talked to Jack Conley today at practice, and more Hafley at practice, and I'll give you some more insight into where things are at with that group. Now, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. Head to BetOnline today, or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today on their website. You can do anything. I love going for their baseball ones. Ohtani, the outfielder for the Angels, I got a nice little prop bet on him having a hit today. Got my fingers crossed on that one. But they're all, anything you can think of, BetOnline has it, and I think that's what makes them better than any other site. So head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you for making us your first listen. We do this every single day during the weekdays. 5 times a week, you can get your Boston College news and analysis right here on Locked On BC. We're the only ones that do it this way, so I hope you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So, as I've said, I've been covering the practices, and again, for those who haven't been listening, you can't, as someone who covers practice, BC allows you 30 minutes per practice to watch. And a lot of times it's stretching, it's getting some warm-ups in. They do some drills at the end that you can kind of get a chance to watch, but you don't get to see the implementation of the game plan. The more interesting information honestly comes from the press conferences, getting to talk to the staff and the players. Now, to be fair, they're conditioned. They're not going to give you everything. And if there's something that's struggling with, they're not going to bring it up. It's going to be something they talk about behind closed doors. So you're only getting certain information, but you get a vibe, and certain vibes give you a better sense of what's really going on with the team. And talking to the players, you get a sense of where they're at. So for instance, just right off the top of the bat, you can tell that Phil Dracovic is very happy to not have to talk about his wrist anymore, or his hand anymore. He seems very relieved to be, free and clear of all of that and being able to talk more about the game plan. And, he seems happier. He seems much happier than he did last year. In fact, when I left practice today, he was still in there when it was like 90 degrees in the Fish Field house. It's swampy in there, man. He was in there throwing bombs with Emmett Moorhead back and forth. They look like they're having a blast out there. So he's got a good vibe to him. But it's not that kind of stuff I wanted to bring up. It is the offensive line, which still and will always be the biggest question mark heading into this season. If you're listening for the first time, just to I always want to make sure you know the situation. Boston College lost 4 offensive linemen that were starters last year to the NFL draft. And Christian Mahogany, who was going to be an All-American guard for the Eagles, tore his ACL and is out for the year. So BC is now has to line up 5 offensive linemen that have not started consistently or are brand new, and put them together with a new offensive line coach and a new offensive coordinator. And so when you see all these preseason analysis, it's the biggest concern of everyone, and rightfully so. But I love what I think it was for Bloxton that said to us during our Twitter space yesterday. He's a fan of the show. He's been on here to talk before. He brought up that 2019 might be a good mark of where this offensive line could be. Remember, there was only 2.5, I believe, guys on that line that had played consistently. Now, Trapillo, Conley, they've had their opportunities to be out there. So you're not that far off. And in Conley, you need to see some improvement. But where is that offensive line now? I think is what everyone wants to know. Everyone keeps tweeting at me. Hey, AJ, who's going to be the 5 starting offensive lineman? Hey, AJ, is this guy going to be the guard? Is that guy going to be the tackle? It's very consistent right now. The consistency is inconsistency right now because they are lining up everyone everywhere. And we got a chance to talk to Jack Conley today, who brought that up. He mentioned some of the names that you're going to want to watch for. I asked him about Jude Bowie, and he called him, very athletic, very powerful, very quick. He seems to have learned a lot. Hafley also talked about him being a guy that could be coming up. So he's someone. Now, Jude Bowie is a true freshman, but from St. Francis Academy. St. Francis Academy is a national powerhouse for high school football, and those are the types of programs that have kids that are more ready to play quick. I mean, they just had C.J. Burton from last year, and he's going to be a starting cornerback this year. So Bowery, he enrolled early. He could be a guy that is ready to roll, but we don't know that yet. We also don't know if Kevin Kline, another player that both Hafley and Conley brought up today, I think he's a redshirt sophomore. I think he's a sophomore at this point. He's a kid from Florida who came in, I think, at 6'7", 350 pounds. He was absolutely massive when he came to campus. I think he might have even been close. He might have actually been pushing 370 when he got here. He's turned down to 315. But Hafley said, Kline can play guard. Kline can play tackle. Trapillo can play guard. Ozzy Trapillo can play tackle. Ozzy Trapillo is a name that you're going to want to watch for at tackle and guard. That could be he could be the MVP of that line this year. But I think that's where they're at right now. And it's frustrating for some of us, there are some of you out there that really want to know now, but right now they are plugging and playing everyone everywhere. It's like playing, building a house. Or not, actually, it's not like building a house. It's like trying to create a robot. You put together all these different pieces. Sometimes it doesn't work. You move something over here. You move that connector over here. See what happens. See what actually gets it to work. And I think that's where the offensive line is right now. And I was talking to another reporter after practice today, and he said, yeah, when I heard Hafley say they're running the ball 50% of the time, he goes, that to me means that the offensive line still hasn't figured it out yet. And that they're still, because run blocking is easy. You go attack that guy, but it's the pass blocking that's a little bit more challenging. So he said, his comment was, they're still working on it. And that makes sense. It's only a week into camp right now. So this is just a weekend takeaway for BC. This is just what we've learned about at this moment. So, when you see reports that, I think he's a freshman, or he's a redshirt freshman, Otto Hess, has been doing real well at guard. That's great. But is he actually going to be the guard there, or is he doing it just to try it out? So you can't really read in. My point is, with the offensive line, it seems like they're a week in, and Conley feels pretty confident that they're getting things together. He seemed it when you talked to him. He seemed very confident that things are going to come together, but they still have 3 more weeks left. So I think that's kind of where it's at. And I don't expect BC to come up with an answer to the offensive line situation until like a week before the game, when we get that first depth chart. And even then, sometimes Hafley just sends those out and changes it on the fly. So we might have to wait until opening snap against Rutgers on the 3rd. Now, in our final segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about the passing game and look at a few different things that came up over the press conferences over the last few weeks and where my thoughts are about the state of the passing game and what I think BC may be going in 2022. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black. This is our second big camp discussion here on Locked On Boston College. Again, I am an insider. I cover Boston College. I go to practices as much as I can. And I give you what I see, what I hear, and give you my impressions of what's going on. And I have other resources through Eagle Insider. You're getting it from the horse's mouth. So each of you that have made us your first listen, again, thank you so much. We're gonna have a great time covering and listening to Boston College news all together throughout the season. Now, one of the biggest non-question marks this year, I think, has to be the passing game. Now, of course, the caveat to all of this is, can Phil Dracovic stay healthy? I must have said that probably 400 times doing this every single day. So we're not even going to get into that piece if Phil Dracovic stays healthy, because we've talked about that. What we're going to look at here is where the offense is going, where the wide receivers need to step up here, because the key, the storyline coming out of camp right now, to me, is BC is going to do everything in their power to get Zay Flowers the ball as much as humanly possible, because he is as we've seen over and over again, he can be a game changer. But Hafley has said, I think he said, and quote me if I'm wrong, I think he says his goal is to have Flowers touch the ball like 15 times a game, which is crazy, given that, he's averaging only 4 or 5 catches a game, I think, last year. Again, with Grosel throwing on the ball, I get that. But what can this offense do with new offensive coordinator John McNulty that can kind of change things up, that gets the ball to him, that gets things going? And it's not just gimmicky college stuff. There's parts of the game I think BC is going to need to improve upon, and it's not just Flowers, that's going to take this passing game to the next level. And to me, that is the short game. Now, one of the new features that I have on Eagle Insider is I have access now to Pro Football Focus. I've been looking at their grades, and one of the things I pulled up when I did my wide receiver preview yesterday was I looked at Zay Flowers' grades, and if you look at what he can do on the long game, when those deep passes, his grades are like elite. He has like a 92, which if you follow Pro Football Focus, you know how high of a grade that is. That's excelling at the long pass. But it goes down as it goes in, like as it goes shorter and shorter. And to the point where where he would take a screen pass, he's well below average. And I think that's not just on Zay. I think that's also on Dracovic, that there's been something in this last couple years under Cignetti, the offensive coordinator now with Pitt, that shows that BC is not that efficient with the short game. Djokovic struggled throwing those. He said it himself. Like, he has not been the best at getting those passes to their receivers in a good way. And that is something that he wants to improve upon. We talked to Mitch Wolf. Mitch was saying that that's something that Djokovic has to improve on. And it's not just screen passes. We're talking quick ones, slants, all that kind of good stuff. That needs to be a focal point of this offense, and we're going to have to hear more about it. I think hearing from the players, hearing from the staff that that's something that they're looking at is a positive sign, because we know Djokovic can throw a 40-yard bomb. That's not something that we're worried about here. It's hitting Zay Flowers for 5 yards, letting him run for 12. It's hitting Zay Flowers for a quick first down, or hitting Jaden Williams over the middle. Those are the things that this offense needs to continue to improve upon, and I get the sense, just from talking to the staff and to the players, that this is a focal point of this offseason, that this is what they're looking at camp, figuring out ways of getting better at it, using McNulty's system to kind of improve upon that. So for those of you out there that are hoping to see more of that, I think you're going to see it. We're just going to see how effective it's going to be. Now, on tomorrow's show, we're going to continue looking at some of the big topics around BC sports. I'm going to dive in and look a little bit more about recruiting. I had some folks ask about basketball. I'll have a whole segment on basketball tomorrow too, because we're getting closer to their start of the season too, and I want to get into some of the things going on around that program. This is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC or at LockedOnBC. Again, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're everywhere. Find us wherever you get your social media. Again, if you have not hit subscribe on YouTube, do that now. Go to YouTube, hit subscribe. It helps us a ton. Thank you all who have done that. We'll be back tomorrow with another show, and I can't wait to talk to you then. See you soon.